Hey, welcome to another episode of the Decoding Cross-Border Ecommerce podcast. And today's a big day, Aaron.
Big day.
We've acquired Evolve Trade Services, and our guest today, Jason Bai, is the co-founder. Yourself and Bill Coleman. So, hey, welcome to St. George. Welcome to the team, Jason. We're really excited about this and excited to talk to you a little bit about your journey and what you've built.
Yeah, thank you. Really excited to be here and to join the Zonos family.
So I think today want to learn about Evolve, a little bit of the history. Want to talk about why we acquired an e-commerce broker, what this unlocks for Zonos, and I think our customers. I think it impacts, postal operators a lot, as well as consolidators that are. You have a big client base of shipping consolidators that use us for brokerage. So. Tell us a little bit about the origin story here, Jason. You also have Evolve Supply Chain Solutions, but yeah, tell us how you got into brokerage and just especially, he went through his own journey of de minimis. So I want to hear about that too. We had our own version last year and excited to hear yours.
Yeah, excellent. So, Bill and I, we met probably 15 or so years ago in a high volume e-commerce space. And it was on the retail shipping side. And what we saw emerge in this space was people trying to save money, fast fashion, trying to get to the end consumer quicker. And so in that space, we saw the emergence of the origin, pick, pack, and ship directly to consumer in the US without touching a US fulfillment center. And in order to do that at the time, it was Type 86, Section 321. And so when we started Evolve Supply Chain Solutions, that was the focus. It was enabling e-commerce from origin into the US, leveraging Type 86. So that was the focus of Evolve Supply Chain Solutions at the time. We built up Evolve Supply Chain Solutions to handle air freight. At the time, we were using third-party brokers, the air freight recovery, and then the handoff to final mile providers. And part of that strategy was identifying the need of carving some of those out and bringing them in-house. And we started Evolve Trade Services, completely separate entity to handle the brokerage. And so as we developed in that space, the focus was always still on e-commerce. So we didn't really want to do formal entries. It was at the time Type 86. And then as of last year, when de minimis went away, pivoted very quickly to Type 11.
But for the audience sake, what's the difference between, and most will know, but 86, Type 11?
Yeah, how big of a transformation is that to be able to do high volume 86 to be able to pivot and do high volume Type 11? Because it seems like in the industry that's pretty disruptive.
Yeah, I would say it was very disruptive. A lot of the 86 customers, it was de minimis. Basically, you needed an HTS code. Under $800, you weren't paying duties and tariffs. So there wasn't a lot of need to focus on even accuracy of your classifications. There was no manufacturer info required. And so the transition to Type 11 was really hard for these high volume shippers that never had that data. And so there was kind of a scramble in the industry to figure out how to do this and keep the volume moving. And, I think that was the most disruptive part, is getting the right data. And so we worked with some select large clients of ours, or consolidators, as well as some smaller brands, to help them understand the new regulations and requirements, get the data from them so that they could be compliant with the new regulations. And obviously with Type 11, the compliance scrutiny goes up. You're now paying duties and tariffs in a very changing environment. And so that was the key point, to make sure that, hey, we've got the right data. We can do the, proper classification, and they can understand what those duty and tariff liabilities are. So I think that was the biggest challenge in the industry, to get all the right information.
It feels to me like if we kind of go through the why behind why this all came together, a big catalyst to this was the postal stuff that we're supporting. We're supporting the majority of postal volume coming to the U.S. today, and we are supporting a lot of, as a qualified party, which is not a brokerage, but it was a temporary process where we were able to facilitate helping to collect the tariffs and get that to U.S. Customs. Now, the writing's on the wall. We know generally what's coming. It'll be very similar to a Type 11 entry. Will require brokerage, and that's where we decided, hey, let's team up together. Let's bring Evolve Trade Services in-house to be able to facilitate that transition. It feels to me like that transition is going to be very similar to what you already went through with going from a Type 86 to the Type 11. I don't know if you want to talk to a little bit about kind of your thoughts on that and kind of the advantage of the experience you already had and how that can help us in this new transition that's coming in the coming months.
Yeah, I would say it feels very similar. Having some of these conversations this week on how that's going to look and even the unknowns. I would say this feels a little bit more unknown than transitioning to Type 11 that was already a defined process. But it is very similar to that same level of, okay, what data do we need? I think the benefit, at least, from our position of doing these Type 11s is that I don't think it's going to be more stringent than Type 11, right? I think there's an expectation that it will be somewhere between Type 11 and what was Type 86. And so I think that's a benefit from a industry perspective on how we can pivot to make this all work right.
Excellent. And you said in your business, you're doing you deal a lot with airlines and things like that, right? Because I don't know if you know this or not, but I love airplanes. In fact, I'm working on a documentary right now on how to fly a plane. And currently I'm filming the pilot. There's my token dad joke for the episode.
That's good.
I'm really not that
Did your kids laugh at that one? Or
that was a dad joke for the day on my dad joke calendar. So
okay. So you give it to them tonight.
Yeah. I left before they all woke up. So I'll deliver that tonight at dinner.
Yeah. Early morning podcast. They missed out.
So, before Type 11, I know obviously landed cost is a big part of what you all do today. How did you see that change from what you were doing before to with this Type 11 process?
Do you want to take that?
Yeah, I would say, you mean just kind of our business in general, if I look at the U.S. import side of things, we have a unique set of tools and technology that's designed to help with compliance and pre-collection of duty and tax, really enabling DDP globally. But U.S. imports wasn't on many people's radar for, needing our technology because kind of to what you're talking about, the Type 86, it's pretty darn simple. There was no duties and taxes to calculate. Compliance was pretty loose. So for us, it was a massive catalyst to where all of a sudden U.S. imports became a major target for people looking for solutions, and we were well positioned to be able to help fulfill those needs. And that's where the postal is one aspect of that, but there's a lot more beyond that, to where U.S. imports became from a small part of our business to being a very, very relevant part of our business. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Clint.
No, I was just thinking. I was thinking about how excited I am actually about the joining of the two teams. I want to. As you were talking, you just got me thinking about, okay, what we do as a company and then what Evolve's been doing. And this is why I'm extremely excited is we have all this rich data that we've always received at the time of transaction. Like you're saying, we're enabling DDP, which is why you got me thinking, about this. We have pictures of the items. We have really rich descriptions. We have exact validation of the receipt on the order. And then we have a mess after that happens, because after the order occurs, we're trying to map these things into the right fields, right, on a shipping platform. And it gets, it's like the telephone game, right? And by the time it gets to you as a broker, what kind of data does it usually look like when it gets to you? Does it look like the data I just described, Jason?
No. Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest challenge for us. And that's, I think, why we're excited about having your technology as far upstream as it is to really capture that.
This is why we're pumped, because we even see brokers make mistakes, right? Or they actually did it right, but they just had the wrong info, right? It's like you deal with what you have. We're going to be able to ensure that first off, it's going to be super highly compliant, right? People aren't going to be able to, in most of the cases, right, especially when our technology's been enabled, deceive on, amounts or accidentally make mistakes. Sometimes people get overcharged because they put the wrong things on the commercial
Accidentally put a
invoice.
zero on there, or
Have seen extra zeros. We've seen extra quantities on accident. Things like that just blow up the. I won't say which massive provider is doing this, but there's a very large shipping company that we're familiar with that for the longest time was having an issue with was it the quantity, or anyways, it doesn't matter. Something was wrong at the time of the system, and it was increasing the duties and taxes to individuals in other countries. And this was like a back end issue, right? And so I'm just really excited about the fact that we're going to be able to help our e-commerce companies that work with us. We now have the ability to control the entry if we can do the clearance, if we can, right? We're already paying the money typically. We're collecting the money from them. Then we have to give it to a broker that gives it to CBP. So you cut some of that movement out and effort and time. And then applying this experience that we have to the postal operator space, because it is going to be rough for them. It was rough to go to even the qualified party process. And then you talked about the data collection process. Some are ready or will be more ready than others, but we have things like our prepay app, right, which is deployed in many countries around the world. Right now in Japan, they recently went live with our prepay app, so we're getting data from individuals on the C2C shipments. So we're going to be able to take all this technology and now apply that information to the clearance to support just a more compliant and hopefully more trustworthy, clearance. So CBP has more confidence in what's going on. So anyways, I'm just excited.
Yeah. In fact, I want to add a little bit to, this transition to the de minimis going away. That was probably the biggest thing for us. And since we haven't been involved in brokerage, we didn't necessarily experience directly the same problems that you went through and you had to solve for, but indirectly we felt the pain of trying to coordinate with third-party brokers across the spectrum of carriers that were compatible and partner with. And everybody clearly was trying to scramble to deal with these new data elements. I mean, and then it's not just going to type 11, it was the chaos of all the new tariffs and, smelt and aluminum and steel content. And, there's a lot of volatility in the market to where everyone's trying to figure out how to deal with these things. And so we saw everyone trying to adapt to these things, and without you didn't have mature, stable processes. Everyone's scrambling to keep up, and we saw a lot of different types of behaviors happening from one provider to the next, and that's been difficult for us to calculate and guarantee a landed cost up front, but then depending on the provider, we're seeing different behaviors because
and when you say different behaviors, they're not always doing it correctly.
No, or part of it could be the right data was trying to be sent, but they were trying to build new systems to be able to actually accept it, and some of that wasn't working exactly right.
I always had this impression that brokers did everything right, and there's been a couple that we've seen from some big names, right? We get a bill back, and we're like, this is wrong. You're stacking something that shouldn't be stacked. You're doing what is happening here? And then you're disputing it, right? And it's a complete mess. And we have zero control over the process.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of, this conversation is, hey, wherever possible, if we can control that experience from all the way upstream to in a checkout or at the point of sale at a counter, or just interfacing with the shippers as much as possible and really understanding the transaction and what needs to happen, and we're the ones actually doing the clearance, it takes out all the variables of having middlemen in the middle and different integrations, and it allows us to effectively start doing the customs clearance right at that point of sale, which I think is extremely powerful.
Our mission is to create trust in global trade. That's Zonos' mission, right? So the company knows this. We say it all the time. And what erodes trust more than anything is information that doesn't match and that can't be explained. And so even though we can try to unwind why something happened and why a broker did a certain thing, but there's so many things from even the broker doing it wrong to the systems being integrated wrong that cause distrust. And this, I think, now moves us more, closer and closer to what our final mission is, which is we want CBP to trust the process. We want consolidators, postal operators to trust the process and how it's being done. And we want our merchants and retailers and marketplaces that work with us to trust the process. And we've always been great with I think on the e-commerce side, because we do such a detailed calculation. We break down every single tariff. We break it down by item. We break it down. I mean, the smell, whatever, like we're doing the whole thing, right? We're giving everybody a very detailed breakdown of the calculation. And then what comes back from the broker is not detailed, and it's like this jumbled mess, and you're trying to unwind, like, what did you do, right? How did this, and it might even be right, but it's trying to figure out like how they got to what they got to. So I think this is moving us closer to that mission.
For sure. Jason, as far as your background, you've been in this e-commerce space for a number of years. Have you ever seen anything like what's going on here in the U.S. in the last year?
No, I would say, from my perspective, it seems unprecedented in terms of just not only the amount of change, but the pace of change. And for an industry that's been, I would say, very stable for so many years, probably decades, right? In terms of what the interaction between brokers and CBP are and the changing regulations, which is, slow and steady, has gone to chaotic. And I think it's really spun the industry around in terms of who can keep up, who can figure out how to get the right information, how to calculate these changing tariffs that have become very complex as well. And then even on the shipper side, even established shippers have been challenged to try to figure that out. And then when you go down below, kind of your commercial shippers to individuals, right, that are going to a retail counter, bringing a package of, maybe it's something they want to ship to a relative. They're not going to have any idea, how to comply with that. So I think that's where, this solution also solves that gap of knowledge for the regular person who's trying to ship a package, or even smaller companies that are trying to ship their goods. So I think it's a great blend of you're enabling them to get it right from the start, which just makes everything flow better all the way through the filings. And
then even when you were missing in, what you have, right? You've missed some of that data that's at time of transaction. Why do you think you're so successful in winning business, some big companies, some bigger shippers into the U.S.? What was it about Evolve that they were so excited about, and why you've retained your customers? Because I mean, we saw it as we met and we talked about the customer base, and we've heard a lot of great things about Evolve, both from customers and from agencies, right? I think there's have a good reputation. Like, why do you think that is?
I think what's really helped the way that we approach every customer situation is having been on the shipper side. So having been on the e-commerce side of this business, we approach it from that standpoint of every opportunity, we're looking at it through the shipper's eyes of, how can we make them successful? And then also from a compliance standpoint, we want to be compliant, right? I mean, in the brokerage space, there's not a margin for error, right? You need to be compliant. You need to, and so all of that regulatory compliance needs, kind of bringing that to the customer, educating them on what's needed, and then really just helping them be successful in a very active management type approach of, we're not just, hey, here's what you need to do, give us the data, we're going to file it. It's a very hands-on approach that we take. And I think that's what's helped us be very successful in this space.
Yeah. I think that's one thing that stood out to me is understanding your customer. I don't think that's the case for a lot of brokers out there. If you've just been on the brokerage side of things only, it's hard to understand your customers, especially in this new world, in this new environment, which I think does tell the tale as far as why you're able to adapt and have the success that you've had. And I've noticed that even, it's not just you, not just Bill, like even your team and the brokers you have on your team have a diverse background in e-commerce and have experienced things outside of just brokerage and really understand the e-commerce space as a whole, which I think is probably really powerful for your team and probably helped to write the story of Evolve up to this point.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's been a focus on how we look at, even when we make new hires, is what is their background? How is that going to carry forward that mentality that we already have?
We've definitely been impressed with the team. Yesterday we had a company meeting actually here in the hangar, right? So it was just flooded, right? We had so many people in here. you and the team got to talk to and field questions from the Zonos team. And I will say the company is extremely excited about this. I'm excited. Aaron's excited. We're excited for our customers. We're excited what this means for the future of not just kind of cross-border DDP, but the future of clearance and how we start bringing those worlds together of transaction and clearance. But any other questions that you have, Aaron? Because this was super insightful. We're really excited to work with, to have you guys on board, and this is going to be really good.
One last question, Jason. As you look forward, like what's the one thing that excites you the most?
So in this moment, I think having been out here for the last few days and seeing your team and the people that you all have hired and the culture you've built at this company, as well as the technology that's powering it, I think that's really exciting for us, to see how you'll take what we've started and add a bunch of great resources on, the people side and technology side, and position that really well with all these changes that are coming up. So I think that's what's really exciting is that, we couldn't have done that alone, right? You guys have a reach and a data flow that we never would have been able to really tie into without this. So for us, I think that's really exciting to see where this goes from here with this acquisition.
Us too. All right. Thanks, Jason. Aaron, it's great being back for a podcast. Can't wait for the next one.
Thanks, Clint.
All right.
Thanks, Jason.
Both. Appreciate it.
See ya.